Well, whoever had money on for Nottingham Forest and Liverpool being a top of the table clash come January at the start of the season, well, then you're picking all of our lottery tickets. You're making us all very rich individuals because that would have been a hell of a call. Nottingham Forest have gone on to have an incredible season so far, getting up to third in the Premier League table. Fantastic run of form that's made them sit up there with some of the very elite in this country. And they're a team I've been meaning to cover on this channel for a little while now. I haven't managed to get round to them due to just real life circumstances that have prevented me from making videos for periods, as you all know if you've watched long enough. And two, since I've been back making videos, I just haven't really had the appropriate time to do so. And I guess this is a place where I can pay respect and give them a bit of the credit that they definitely deserve. Nuno has done a fantastic job with this team. They are better than the sum of their parts, as the saying goes. And they are a well-oiled machine. Frustrated Liverpool a lot in this game. Liverpool can feel a bit unlucky to not come out of this with a win, because especially late on, they did create chances, and Matt Sells was definitely integral to the points being shared. But that's the luck you get at points when you're flying high as Nottingham Forest are. And to be honest with you, for Liverpool to go away to the City Ground and get a point, it's not a bad point. Not a bad point at all. I think this is a tough place to go with how defensively strong Forest are, how much they sit and reduce space. It's hard for any team to really play against and break down. And they've got defenders, Nottingham Forest, that are playing at the absolute top of their game, playing at a very, very high level. And Liverpool just have a little bit of an issue in attack. And it's something that I guess will be their next issue to address. I don't think they'll do it in January, but in the summer, that's their next step. But we'll go over the game. We'll go over the Liverpool attacking stage. So Liverpool would build up in their 2-3-2-3 that could interchange with the likes of McAllister being pretty flexible in his role. It would be as you would expect, as they normally line up, the midfield three sitting in the middle of the pitch with Luis Diaz playing as the false nine type player in this system, Salah and Gakpo out wide. And they could move up into their attacking stage pretty quickly, as Forest had no real interest in pressing Liverpool. They weren't trying to catch them out in their defensive areas, force turnovers, and get chances on goal that way. They're a team that like to sit deep, that soak up pressure. They're not the most mobile defenders in the world, so giving them as little space to have to defend in as possible is great for them, and their unit is fantastic for us. You get Chris Wood in between the two centre-backs, sort of managing the space in between them, so they can't play a safe horizontal pass to their closest teammate. They have to play into that congested centre of the pitch area that Forest make it very hard to penetrate. Hudson-Odoi and Alanga would come up to the two fullbacks, which again would invert, rotate. They have a little bit of freedom to move up the pitch vertically and down the pitch vertically as they so fit. So Hudson-Odoi and Alanga had to manage that. Gibbs-White would push onto Gravenberch, Anderson onto Szoboszlai, and Ryan Yates onto McAllister. Sometimes you get the likes of Gravenberch and even the fullbacks dropping in a little bit deeper to receive the ball from the defenders, but Forest wouldn't look to go and engage. Anything that was really past that line of that forward area was almost out of bounds for them to go and press. They'd rather reduce the space in the middle and just view it that if they had the ball in these deeper areas, there was not a lot they could do with it. So it was almost pointless going to press at points. So Liverpool could get a bit of possession in this area, but it was all to the game plan of Nottingham Forest. And it was how they sort of manipulated the Forest shape to create chances. And they did do a decent job of it. They did create openings, but Forest always responded well to it. So one of the ways they did would be to get Gravenberch coming up here, dragging Gibbs-White out of position, maybe into the forward line, and potentially overload him and Wood with Gravenberch in the back too. Maybe Trent Alexander-Arnold if he dropped in to create that little numerical overload in those deeper areas. And Anderson and Yates would be dragged apart as McAllister and Szoboszlai would look to stretch them and pull them apart and create a little bit of space in the middle of the pitch that Luis Diaz could drop into and come into. Now, this did create a bit of an issue for Nottingham Forest, as Diaz could get on the ball, look to turn on it, drive at the centre of the pitch and play out wide to the likes of Salah, to the likes of Gakpo, what they could create. And to be fair to Liverpool, they had a lot more success playing over on the left-hand side than they did the right. And the reason for that is because with the pass that Van Dijk can angle into Diaz and with the way that Anderson and Yates will have been stretched, it leaves the option for Milenkovic to come and press up to Diaz in this area. And as opposed to Murillo, Milenkovic isn't as comfortable leaving his defensive line to come and engage in more forward areas. He's not got that mobility. I mean, to be fair, Murillo isn't the most mobile, but Milenkovic isn't. Like, he is a bit of a box defender, and as much as he's got a great aerial threat, he's dominant in that sense. Getting him out of his position is exploitable because he's not great at recovering in behind, so he's not as eager to come out and engage Diaz in these areas. So Diaz could look to turn and create in these areas and cause issues. Didn't get as much success over on the far side if they were trying to build up on the right Liverpool, and the pass maybe came from Trent Alexander-Arnold in these areas to get Diaz on the ball. Murillo was a lot more front-footed. He was aggressive, and he'd come in and he'd tackle well to win the ball off of Diaz. A colossal performance from Murillo. I'll speak about it more in detail as this goes on. But to be fair to Forest, they adapted to this really well. So let's just say Van Dijk was getting a few passes off to Diaz, or that back line of Liverpool were getting those passes into Diaz, finding them easy with the ball to feet, which they did a lot at the start of the game. Forest adapted well, and with that, you'd see Ryan Yates coming over to Diaz, blocking that passing lane into him, which would then allow Alanga to come into McAllister, who would be left as an option. And typically, you see McAllister coming into these deeper pivot areas. Because of the Nottingham Forest shape, it felt pointless for him to do so. You almost needed to overload that central attacking area of the pitch to try and get joy against this Nottingham Forest shape. So he wasn't coming in as deep to get on the ball. He still had that option to do so because he is technically good enough to receive the ball in these areas and create, but that just wasn't where he was going to hurt Forest. That's where Forest ideally wanted him. So he could remain in this position to draw Alanga in. This would then obviously open up the pass into Robertson, but to be fair to Alanga and to Ryan Yates and Anderson, when that happened, they moved across well. Alanga would quickly move into Robertson. He didn't have a lot of space to move into because of how vertically compact Forest were, so he wasn't necessarily breaking lines. So when he did, there wasn't a lot of space between him and Gakpo. So Alanga could recover and get goal side of him and force him back inwards. Ryan Yates would come across, maybe Gibbs White would even drop in, or Anderson would come across, and Hudson-Odoi would come across and cover, and they'd get back into a really, really good shape. And that left side did present a little bit of an issue for Nottingham Forest with Robertson and Gakpo, and it was with Alanga and Aina doing their marking jobs. And to be fair, it wasn't that they did bad jobs, they did very good jobs. It's just that when you're dealing with high class, top level, technical attacking players, they always find a way to create openings and achieve their ultimate goals. So typically you'd get Alanga staying in a little bit in arrow because of the threat of the Diaz overload of the midfield. So what he would do is hover into this area here when he needed to. So let's just say if Gakpo's positioning pushed Aina in centrally, the ball could go over to Van Dijk. I've lost the ball here for a second. The ball could go over to Van Dijk. Robertson again couldn't really find space, so Alanga would drop in, almost forming into a little bit of a back five to prevent him from exploiting these areas and overlapping. He would cover in. The biggest issue came when it was Gakpo on the left hand side and Robertson was making an inverted run because Aina would still track his movements in the centre area. Aina wasn't willing to be separated from the rest of the back four. They needed to be as horizontally compact as perfectly possible. But Alanga would still do the job of getting goal side of the man in the wide areas, which would be Gakpo. But the difference between Gakpo and Robertson is that Robertson won't turn on the inside. He will look to stay wide, hold the width, and try and get crosses away. He's fairly predictable, and rightly so, as a fullback. Whereas Gakpo can go both ways. Alanga making sure he was getting goal side gave Gakpo the freedom to move inside into the half space and into the central zone. We could get a pass away, whether that's to McAllister or Diaz or Robertson, get a shot away trying to bend one in the top corner, or a cross looping over to the likes of Diaz or Salah coming in at the far post. He had a lot more of an availability to hit the box and try and beat that Nottingham Forest shape, which he didn't do as much because his quality was a bit lacking. Sells was fantastic in goal, and Murillo and Milenkovic were just phenomenal in the box. They defended that box expertly, especially Murillo. Not only defended the box really well, he defended the transition as well. Whenever Liverpool would go direct from back to front in certain situations, he managed the attackers one-on-one, picking the perfect moment to go in and tackle and win the ball and kill any attack before it had a chance to really manifest. Such a fantastic player, Murillo. Nottingham Forest have pulled off an absolute gem here. So as much as there was the possibility for them to attack down the left, Forest dealt with it really well. On the right-hand side, which we know Liverpool have their threat, especially with Trent Alexander-Arnold, who was kept in these deeper areas a lot. because of the way that Nottingham Forest shaped up and how deep they were and how vertically compact they were and horizontally compact, Trent couldn't really get the space in these forward areas that he would need to use his passing range to good effect in this area to get those crosses in because there just wasn't space for him to do so. Hudson-Odoi would press him in these areas when it looked like he was going to use his long range passing to split the play. And to be fair to Hudson-Odoi and Langer, they did a fantastic job of managing the fullbacks well and reading their actions. Langer would again be narrow in these situations, but would be ready to drop in and cover the wide area on the far side if that direct pass to Robertson was on. And Hudson-Odoi did a brilliant job of stopping that from coming on, forcing Alexander-Arnold into a bit of a safe pass backwards. Likewise, on the other side, it happened on this side. If Salah found himself in a more narrow position, which he did a lot more in the second half than he did the first, Hudson-Odoi would track the Alexander-Arnold overlapping run into the wide areas really well. Alexander-Arnold didn't really have any time and space to get any crosses away in this area. Nottingham Forest could drop into their five at the back and they defended really well. And again, just not a lot of space for those Liverpool attackers to work with. Salah didn't really get any time and space to get any sight of goal. And those wide overloads could create crossing opportunities, but again, still hard to beat the Murillo and Milinkovic centre-back partnership. And I've not even spoken about Szoboszlai and McAllister because they couldn't really get any joy in these central areas. Again, with how much space Nottingham Forest were restricting them, and the man-marking jobs of Yates and Anderson that just prevented them from getting any real time and space to get a hold of the ball and create, as we know they can. Yates, you call it dark arts, call it gamesmanship, fouled, slowed the game down whenever he could, and just managed the game expertly. Frustrating, I know, when it's the opposition team doing it, but one of those dark arts that you love it when it's your team. And just again a really solid performance from Nottingham Forest in their defensive stage. They just gave Liverpool no space. A deep 4-4-2 when they were pushed back. Support from the wingers to block the wide areas. And great box defending, great goalkeeping. And where Liverpool got their joy was they sacrificed a defender to bring on Diogo Jota in this area. He performed that sort of false nine role a little bit better than Diaz and was dropping in to create overloads again to get on the ball turn and play in behind Forest. But he would also make really good runs into the box to get on the end of things and pose a threat in the box where Diaz didn't. Diaz, when he would play the pass, wouldn't make the movement needed for the team. But also, to be fair to Diaz and, to just maybe add a bit more context to what Jota was doing, Jota was an extra man. Diaz was dealing with the shape at its minimal, at its foundation, at its most basic form in the start of the game. Whereas for Jota to get the space he did, it meant that Liverpool had to sacrifice a centre-back, and Forest just didn't really have a plan for that necessarily, so I had to rely on players reacting in the moment, and sometimes that can lead to a player becoming free and getting shots and opportunities off, which Jota did, and he got his goal, fantastic header. But still, can't discredit the defensive performance at all from Nottingham Forest. And when they win the ball, they're not looking to hold the ball, get into their little build-up patterns and try and pass Liverpool to death and frustrate them with that sort of death by a thousand cuts type thing. It's direct, it's quick, it's getting the ball up the field as quick as possible and exploiting the Liverpool high line and the Liverpool overcommitting to the attack. And the main source for their counter-attack and play Nottingham Forest would be this guy, Callum Hudson-Odoi. He would look to make the run off the back of Trent Alexander-Arnold. We know Alexander-Arnold's defensive deficiencies. I don't need to go over it. It's one of the most consistently discussed things in English football over the last 5 years. So that ball would go up to him. He'd look to either attack Alexander-Arnold one-on-one or get him behind him if he'd overcommitted. And the issue with this is, and as much as Hudson-Odoi did a good job getting the ball forward into more attacking areas, is he is very scared of using his left foot. So Konate and Van Dijk would naturally drop off a little bit deeper to try and prevent the counter-attack from causing issues. Let's say Robertson dropping in as well, Alexander-Arnold, Gravenberch trying to get in. Konate would drop in a little bit deeper, ready to pounce on Hudson-Odoi when he needed to. But all Hudson-Odoi was interested in was taking the ball on his right foot and looking to play the ball inside. Gibbs-White did a really good job of trying to support him with underlapping and overlapping runs and offer that little bit of technical quality to receive the ball and maybe play 1-2s to play Hudson-Odoi in. There is a really good player in Hudson-Odoi, but I don't think he's got the right mental skill sets for his physical skill sets. I don't think he uses his pace to get to the byline and stretch the team as much. I think he's very one-footed. and just is a bit more predictable in his movement, that he wants to cut inside on his right foot and create or take a shot on. And it felt like Gibbs White, when he received the ball in these areas, was really trying to find ways he could force Hudson-Odoi into these more attacking areas down the right. But because Hudson-Odoi doesn't make those movements, I feel like he needs to in those occasions, it gives Liverpool time to come back. You'd sometimes get the off-the-ball movement of Elliot Anderson from deep coming in to assist, to try and just add to a little bit of an overload on that side, create a bit of an opening for Hudson-Odoi. But to no avail. You still get the movement from deep of those two in Gibbs White and Anderson that can receive the ball in these central areas when Hudson-Odoi plays it inside. I think both are really smart with their movement in behind as well, to try and stretch that Liverpool play, not just for themselves to receive the ball, but just maybe drag a defender away, give someone a little bit more space, especially with Chris Wood spearheading the attack and getting forward in his physical presence, occupying one or two defenders. Anthony Elanga would come in from the right as well, and he wouldn't look to necessarily have it on the outside of Robertson in this area. He would join the central overload and look for those quick, easy passes horizontally to receive it in transitional opportunities to make sure that Forest could sustain their attacks, which he did for the Forest goal, where he received it in this area on a counter-attack. Van Dijk dropping in a little bit deeper, and he could play a really good ball into Chris Wood, who finished excellently off of Van Dijk. And Anthony Elanga, I think, does offer the type of transitional threat you want from your pacey wide player. The only problem is he's not got the quality of Hudson-Odoi. His quality at points Elanga is a little bit all over the place. So if you combined Elanga's mental attributes with Hudson-Odoi's technical ones, you've got the ultimate winger. But it feels like they both have what the other lacks. And just in case they could sustain it a little bit, and Elanga couldn't progress the ball to Wood in these areas, and I'll give Wood his credit, his movement is subtle, but it's fantastic. For a big guy, he's quite light on his feet, and he just manages to pull away and create a yard when he needs to. He's having a stunning season, and fair play to him. Aina could come across on the right-hand side, create that overlapping option where Robertson couldn't fully commit to Elanga, so Elanga had a little bit more space up until McAllister would cover in, or Szoboszlai or Gravenberg to get close to him. So if the ball found his way out to Aina, he could produce a cross, which he did a few times. Decent crosses, just didn't result in anything. And that would be the Nottingham Forest counter-attack, trying to use the movement, pace and quality of the players and make sure Chris Wood had a clear enough opportunity where he could use his fantastically on-form finishing to get something from the game. And they got what they deserved, a point. And full credit to them, this isn't a fluke anymore. This is showing that Nottingham Forest are in the top four for a reason, because they deserve to be, because they're good enough to be. And full credit to Nuno Espirito Santo. He's the perfect manager for this type of project. And it's good to see, because I feel like this type of manager was sort of coming out of fashion, but it's nice to know you can achieve success in the Premier League in different ways. It's not all just build-up patterns, pressing phases. There's a little bit of the old school Premier League about it. There's something very Pomo about this, and I'm all for it. Mike Bassett, eat your heart out. But I'd love to know what you guys think. Like the video if you like it, dislike it if you disliked it, comment down below, tell me why either way, and subscribe if you want to see more. In a bit, lads.